This trade deadline preview and Week 14 Slate episode of Cavs on the Break NBA podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network, is brought to you by a presenting sponsor, Aligned Health Center. Aligned Health Center is the first chiropractic biophysics clinic in Northern Ohio. The team at Aligned Health Center helps patients with back pain, neck pain, migraines, ADHD, digestive issues, sleep disturbance, whiplash, scoliosis, and much more. And along with chiropractic biophysics, Aligned Health Center is also the leading clinic in regenerative medicine. That's right, regenerative medicine. You may have heard it as stem cell injections. And listen, you don't have to be an NBA player to get this done or have this treatment. If you have low back pain, shoulder pain, knee pain, arthritis, check out the Regenerative Medicine Clinic at Aligned Health Center. Come in for a free consultation, get some imaging done and x-rays to see how Aligned Health Center can help you. There are no multiple shots and it's complete with physical therapy built into the process, so there's no downtime. And look, it gets even better. Aligned Health Center doesn't charge people for x-rays or exams, and they don't bill you later. They'll let you know right away, right up front, how much it is. They are transparent. They are number one for a reason. Call Aligned Health Center at 440-385-7357 or visit their website at alignedhealthcenters.com to make an appointment and to learn how Aligned Health Center can help you. Again, that's 440-385-7357 or visit alignedhealthcenters.com and make sure to check it out in our show notes. Also, we have to mention the Press Play Podcast Network. We launched a new show today. Up next, hosted by Kristen Ivy-Lace and Christina Walter, is a show all about your favorite streaming content on Hulu, Netflix, HBO Max, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, to name a few. If you love a show, they will talk about it. They're going to talk about genres of movies and television shows and what they're currently binging and watching right now. I know our first episode today, they're talking about Dead Poet Society. What a way to kick it off. We're kicking it off with a feel-good story. Yeah. Look, we still have the Phenomenal CBD podcast rocking and rolling. The Premier Fantasy podcast with Tito going over all the fantasy implications for the NFL free agency moves. Our Swinging the Tribe MLB podcast is back in action with the Cleveland Baseball Club in spring training. Jeremy Powell and I got you covered with our Browns content with the Orange is Orange and Browns podcast. And did I mention we're launching a new show today? Up next, the first episode drops today. Search for it wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe now. Don't wait. Be a part of the conversation so that whenever you go to work, talk to your family, you can talk about shows that they talk about and be all caught up to speed. Let us watch the shows for you. Up next, check it out. In this episode, Sam and I hope to never talk about Andre Drummond again. We also talk about JaVale McGee and Kevin Love at the trade deadline. Sam shares just a delightful Kyrie story from the locker room, and we review the Week 13 homestand for the Cavs. We also look ahead to the finishing of a Week 14 slate of games heading into Week 15. We're going to be recording Cavs on the Break every Tuesday evening, so we look forward to talking Cavs with you every Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon, or whenever you listen. Just make sure to check us out. All right, guys, enjoy the show.
Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James. It's over. It's over. Cleveland is a city of champions once again. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.
That sound means it's time for Cavs on the Break NBA podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. I am your host, Chase Smith, and with me, he's the editor and writer at 48minutes.com, your assistant editor at Outkick.com. He is our Cavs insider, national NBA writer, Sam Amico. Sam lives right now with his phone plugged into the wall. Sam, how is trade deadline week treating you, sir?
It's real interesting because it seems like all the talk is about like the same 10 guys this year. And
I saw Kyle Lowry's name around today. I didn't expect
he's one of the 10.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
He'd be. Miami's making a big push for him. Philly, he's a Philadelphia guy, and they're making a big push for him. So yeah, he'd be one of the guys that you keep hearing being mentioned.
Yeah. Well, hey, we're going to talk about the trade deadline coming up Thursday, March 25th, and then take a break and talk about the Cavs basketball playing. Sam, what is the latest on Andre Drummond? I've seen a lot. I've seen pictures of him in black and silver and white, like he's, already part of the Nets. Like he's in LA. Where in the world is Andre Drummond, Sam?
Well, the Cavs, interestingly have two of those 10 main 10 guys that I'm talking about, and one's Andre Drummond, obviously. The other we'll touch on is JaVale McGee. But with Andre Drummond, the situation is difficult for the Cavs to find a trade partner because of the amount of money that his contract takes up on a salary cap. They have to take, close to equal money back or a trade exception back for him. Really, only Boston has the trade exception that would work. So, it's difficult. It's sounding like a lot of the other opposing GMs kind of feel like their Cavs are gonna have to buy him out because it's such a difficult trade to make. Now you could potentially get, a third team involved, more players involved, but those trades take a lot of work and a lot of effort. So I think it's going to be real tough for them to trade him, but it's not going to be impossible. And if his contract ends up getting bought out, if you're the Cavs, you have to look at it like, we have now we have this money on our cap for the off season and gives us flexibility to make other trades, potentially sign some free agents. You lose them for nothing in that sense, which is not ideal, but at the same time, it's not the worst situation in the world if that were to happen.
I'm about to send Andre Drummond an invoice for taking up so much airtime on the Cavs of the Break podcast, man. I'm so sick of talking about it. I'm sure it's just kind of like if you're feeling that, Sam, I'm sure it's just all over the team and the organization.
Yeah, that's and we talked about that last time. It can weigh on you a little bit if you're a player, for multiple reasons, and not all of it's negative, but some of it can just, when are we going to get this resolved kind of thing. If you're a player, if you're Andre Drummond, if you're the Cavs, you want to move forward. Everybody wants to move forward. What's the best way to do that? Well, now they're down to the final just about 24 hours to make something happen. So it will be resolved one way or the other by the end of the week.
What would you say if you looked into your crystal ball, Sam? Where does Andre Drummond end up?
It's sounding, I wouldn't know other than to talk to other GMs and hear what's being said around the league. And I ran something on the website, aggregated a report. I can't remember off the top of my head whose report it initially was, but the philosophy is that he's going to be bought out and end up signing with the Lakers. Maybe the thing is the Lakers can only sign him to the veterans minimum. That's all they have room to sign him. Does he want to go there and do that? Now that's one thing I'm hearing. The other thing I'm hearing is, again, they've been talking to the Knicks and potentially can work out a trade that way. And just hypothetically, I think a couple podcasts ago, I brought up Kevin Knox of the Knicks.
Yeah,
that's one of the guys that would be the centerpiece of their conversations. So, I think that's a possibility. New York's a possibility as far as a trade. I don't know that there are really any other strong trade candidates out there, but people they emerge all the time in the witching hour, the final minutes. And I suspect the Cavs will be talking Andre Drummond trade right up until 2:59, the minute before the deadline. So,
and the Cavs want to trade him rather than buy out. Like that's their
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I shouldn't say absolutely. They don't want to take back a bunch of bad money, a bunch of bad contracts just to move them. They would rather free up that salary cap space and that flexibility. And then, you'll have that flexibility to mess around with for the rest of the year and bring guys in for almost kind of tryouts behind Jared Allen. If that's what you're looking for, if you want to sign some wing players or, G League players. And I suspect that will be the route that they'll take is guys who are available. We have a whole list of on 48minutes.com, a whole list all the time of current available veteran free agents. So they're out there. It's not the end of the world if you don't trade them. Sometimes in some situations it might be better not to trade them if if it means, hey, we're weighing ourselves down with more money that we really don't want. I wouldn't trade them. I would buy them out and say, you know what, now we have flexibility and we know who our core is, so we'll move forward with them and we'll get back into the draft and go from there.
Sam, would you say the Andre Drummond experiment in Cleveland worked? Was that something that they looked back and said, yeah, we would do that again? Or is that yet to be defined?
I think you have to wait till after the deadline to determine that. I don't think, the one thing that you have to consider is the Cavs gave up John Henson, Brandon Knight, and I think a second round pick or something. So you basically, and John Henson and Brandon Knight aren't in the NBA right now, so I mean, you basically, in that sense, you gave up nothing to get him. It was worth a shot. You knew it was going to be risky. You knew, when you made the trade, you thought, well, let's see where it goes. The worst thing that happens is it doesn't work out. And if it doesn't work out, well, we didn't mortgage the farm, far from it, to get him. You gave up basically nothing to guys who wouldn't have been on the team this year anyway. So I wouldn't say it was a failure, but I wouldn't say it was a success either, because it wasn't. It was worth a shot. They gave it a shot, and at the time it was a genius move because it was high reward, low risk, and you ended up, the risk ended up not working out for you.
Which era was better for the Cavs, the Dwayne Wade era or the Andre Drummond era?
I thought you were going to say the Andrew Bynum era or the Andre Drummond era. I would probably lean a little bit toward, boy, that's a tough one. Yeah, because Wade, neither one of them worked out. And I know that there were some issues with Wade in the locker room. Nothing terrible, but just there just wasn't good leadership there.
D Wade, if you're listening, this is a reflection of Sam. I think you're the best leader, D Wade. And I'm just I don't have no reference.
It's just my opinion.
He listens.
Not the opinion of the podcast
all the time. He's like, "Yo, when are you going to have me on?"
yeah, right. Yeah, I'll call it a wash.
What about the Shaq era?
Oh, I think the Shaq era was okay. I mean, they won a lot of games. Yeah. I think they win 66 games maybe one year, and then they blew it in the playoffs. But
anyway, the Andre Drummond era, it was a thing. It happened, and I think right now that's all we can say about that. Yet to be defined here in a couple of days. We will know for sure, and then unless we meet them in the finals, Drummond no more.
Yeah, you don't need to worry about it. No, by the time the Cavs, I suspect by the time the Cavs are back in the finals, we will have long forgotten the Andre Drummond era.
All right, let's talk about JaVale McGee, the other kind of trending player that's in the zeitgeist that has the Cavs on people's lips. What is the latest on JaVale McGee, Mr. Amico?
Well, the Cavs have been talking to a lot of people. A lot of teams have been calling about him. I think that they've probably been calling a lot of teams. That situation's obviously a lot different. McGee is still playing. He knows his role, loves his role. He's fine with staying in Cleveland. He may be even fine with staying in Cleveland, through this rebuild for the next 2 or 3 years. And I suspect that they will trade him because there's so much interest. But they're not desperate to trade him. And the one thing about McGee that's different is, any player would prefer to go to a contender. So he would prefer to play for a playoff contender. That said, if you were to trade him to the Chicago Bulls, the Washington Wizards, who are, by the way, very interested in him, Um, I don't know about the Houston Rockets because they're so bad, but just about anywhere he would be fine with it. He's not a guy he's won rings already. He's not out there ring chasing. If if the Cavs were to trade him and talk to him about it, I'm sure he would say, yeah, my preference is somebody who's in the mix, for a title, but do what you got to do. And I think that also, and from everything we've heard, he'd be just fine with staying in Cleveland past the deadline if a deal is not reached. I mean, if you're the Cavs and all you can get for him is a second round pick, well, then maybe you don't trade him because he's fine with staying. And he's again, going back to last week, you need those veteran voices. He's won a couple titles. He's a good kind of mentor to the young guys in terms of, look, I've had all these experiences. I won titles with Steph and Clay and Draymond, and with the Warriors. I won one with LeBron, and Anthony Davis. So I've been around greatness and contributed. So I do think he'll be traded, but I don't think it's like a terrible thing if he's not. I think it's far from a terrible thing.
So looking into your crystal ball, come Thursday evening, where's JaVale McGee?
Boy, I'm going to say the Nets.
Ooh.
Although I don't know what the Cavs have to give or what the Nets have to give back to the Cavs. I'm sure they'll come up with something. But that to me is the team that's been the most aggressive in trying to get him. He'd be perfect there, coming, backing up DeAndre Jordan. That would be my guess, is that'll end up in Brooklyn.
Interesting. Any movement on K-Love? We're going to see anything happen here the next couple of days with K-Love?
The Cavs have been offering him to just about anybody, and to no avail. They're not getting anywhere. And opposing GMs will tell you the injury history, and his contract are too big. If you just had just the contract, which is 2 more years after this year, if you had that, then you might be able to move him to a contender. But then you throw in that he can't stay on the floor, and then you throw in, okay, so he has this contract. How do you make the money work if you're the Cavs, again, without hamstringing yourself to the point where it's like, well, why did we trade him for these 3 guys whose money is going to be just as bad? So I don't think I think it'll take nothing short of a basketball miracle for him to be moved, but it's not for a lack of effort on their part. They are offering him, but I mean, if you're opposing GM, you're saying, okay, what's his status? Is he going to play this year? What's going on? Number one. And number two, I've got to talk, my owner, the team owner, into paying this guy who hasn't played. So it's almost impossible for them to move him.
Yeah. Before we head to a break, Sam, any league surprises you expect over the next 24, 48 hours? We're just like, whoa, or what are you looking forward to most over these next couple of days? Do you enjoy this season of the NBA, this time frame?
Yeah. I what's so funny is I love it and love thinking of the possibilities. What I don't like is how everybody wants to play for like 7 or 8 teams. There's like Milwaukee now. Milwaukee's become a hot spot because of Giannis re-signing there for 5 years.
Plus, people love losing in the second round of the playoffs, so I can see what they'd want to get there.
Well, I mean, all the teams we hear that are trying to get guys like Lowry or Drummond or LaMarcus Aldridge from the Spurs. I don't like how everybody wants to play for the same 7 or 8 teams. I just think that's not good for the league. It's not good for the balance of the league. but that being said, I do enjoy following this. I enjoy seeing, okay, if Kyle Lowry goes to Miami, boy, what would that mean? That's how good would they be? I think there'll be a surprise or two. Boston, Danny Ainge
Love Kyle
typically,
Lowry. Yeah.
yeah, and now we're hearing Malcolm Brogdon from the Pacers being mentioned. I'm like, man, if I'm Indy, I'm real reluctant to move him. He's so underrated,
Yep, I agree.
and fits there so well. So I do love, the possibilities, and I think fans love the possibilities, and I like to engage with the readers and those who follow me on Twitter and stuff. I like to see their excitement about all this. And what's kind of a bummer is, all this build up to Thursday, you have some trades, and then Friday, it's like, okay, now we got to focus on the actual games again.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, I love the games, but it's just the buzz is dead until the draft, really.
Yeah. You know what I love other than Kyle Lowry? A struggling Celtics team, Sam. A struggling Celtics team.
There's so much that has become, I don't want to say a dumpster fire, but
it's become that they lost to the Cavs in Cleveland. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to talk about that and then look at kind of how the Cavs have tried to rebound over the last week or so. All right, we'll be right back.
Hello, Brooks here with the Books with Brooks monthly book club podcast. We read one book a month and then we talk about it. Books like Stephen King's The Shining or Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. If you're on the hunt for book recommendations and enjoy sparkling conversation, come read along with us and then listen in.
Want to hear more about your favorite TV shows and movies that are on countless streaming services?
Then listen to Up Next with your new favorite hosts, me, Kristen Aviles,
and me, Christina Walter.
Every other week we'll highlight one genre, but 2 movies or TV shows, one old and one new.
We'll let you know what's hot and what's not from your favorite
or least favorite
streaming services.
And be sure to stay tuned to the end of each episode where we shout out an artist whose name you should know for their talent in the industry.
So follow us to stay up to date with your favorite hosts from Up Next,
a part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hi, my name's Jeremy Powell, co-host of the Oranges, Oranger, Browns podcast. Check us out anywhere you listen to podcasts. For all your Browns coverage, post-game, pre-game, anything you need Browns, you'll find it here on the Oranges, Oranger, Browns podcast.
Hi, my name is Sam Post, owner of Phenomenal CBD store and PhenomenalCBD.com. That's like phenomenal, CBD.com. Tune in where we talk with experts about how the amazing hemp plant can make a difference for people's health and well-being from the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey, it's Tito, host of the Premier Fantasy Podcast. Get all the news and analysis you need to dominate your fantasy league. I've been doing this as long as anybody in the business. I can help give you the edge in your leagues. It's the Premier Fantasy Podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
You've been pining, you've been waiting for Rega and Rhoda to get back together. We got you. Press Play Podcast. We're ready to go. We're going to have our podcast with everything that you want. Browns, Cavaliers, Indians, Ohio State, the national scene. Kenny Rhoda, Michael Regai back together again. Make sure you keep your ears open. It's happening right here on Press Play Podcast. See you then.
Hey, it's JD from the Hyman Podcast. I created this podcast to have hard conversations. Conversations that make us human but are also wildly uncomfortable. Conversations that help give voice to the voiceless and to the marginalized. Now you can listen to the entire first season on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Consider this your personal invitation to join the conversation.
All right, we are back. Sam, what about all that stuff going on in Press Play on the Press Play Podcast Network? Huh? We got a lot of things coming down the pike, man.
Tons.
Yeah,
Tons.
a lot of great stuff. We've launched a new show today. Up Next, it's all about streaming content that you can watch on any streaming platform. That's being launched. Another show we're announcing today, Sam. Today we're announcing the Red Guy and Rhoda show.
That'll be
back.
cool. Yeah,
It's
that'll
back
be
and
cool.
coming back on the
Yeah.
Press Play podcast. Now we're
Yeah.
so glad to have Michael Ray Guy with us, and Kenny Rhoda is he's been with us the past couple years of Next Man Up. The Ray Guy and Rhoda is back. That's and all of a sudden, Sam, we get to offer this lineup. That's Ray Guy and Rhoda, D-Man, yourself, and I put it against any other talk show kind of spot.
Oh
And
gosh, yeah. Yeah, I think it's really cool. And I like the idea that you said that there's going to be a podcast on streaming.
oh yeah, well, not video game, but like stuff you can watch on Hulu, Netflix.
I think that's really interesting.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Who's your main guy on that, or gal?
yeah, it's two gals, Kristen Avilace and Christina Walter.
Okay.
They are actresses in Chicago and in
Neat.
the industry, and they just love TV and movies. And so
That's
the
really
show's
cool.
launching today, Wednesday, probably when people are listening to this, and they're going to be talking about Dead Poet Society. And every episode, they're going to talk about a theme and then talk about what they're watching now. It's awesome. They're
Wow.
incredible. These girls are
I'll
great.
listen to that.
Yeah,
I'll
it's called
listen to
Up
that.
Next.
I'm real into believe it or not, I'm real into the entertainment industry. I just got a book today. I'm so excited. It's like 6 books thick.
Oh my gosh.
So huge. And it's all about the terrible hair metal industry of the late 80s. Like Poison, Motley Crue,
Oh yeah.
all those terrible bands that I hate. I've hated forever. But the book, the guys who wrote it, one wrote for Rolling Stone, and one wrote for Spin, and I've enjoyed their work over the years. So yeah, I like good kind of entertainment writing and that kind of stuff. And so I bought it. It's like $40 with a delivery charge. My wife was like, "Oh my gosh, you couldn't wait," and I'm like, "No."
No, I had to have it. Yeah, these girls are great. They're brilliant. They're fantastic. They're hilarious, and they know their stuff. So we're really excited about that. Up next, check it out: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts. But hey, let's talk about the Cavs because they struggled out of the All-Star break, but Sam, they're it seems like they've kind of come back and they're playing decent basketball, at least competitive basketball for that matter. They closed out week 13 with a 4-game homestand. They hosted the Celtics on March 17th last week, and they beat the Celtics 117-110. Sam, what is going on up in Boston?
Yeah, it's been a mess. They're not very deep. So when one of the starters goes down, whether it's Kemba Walker, Tatum, or Brown, they don't have a lot of people that are capable of replacing them at that level. And they're way out of sync, which is weird. And I heard all those rumors, I think, excuse me, maybe you did too, about Brad Stevens.
I started him.
Yeah. yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. But him potentially going to Indiana University, and I thought, man, he should do that. I thought he should. Wow. He's an Indiana guy. He took Butler to back-to-back NCAA championships, and I think that the players there like Brad Stevens, but I just think that eventually, Larry Bird always used to say, when he played, he got tired of hearing the same coach's voice after 3 years. And when he coached the Pacers, he stepped down after 3 years for that very reason. He's like, these guys need a new voice.
He was a great coach. I mean, not like
Sure,
no one was asking him to step down at all.
No. And I think that he, is he the last coach, the only coach to get the Pacers to the finals? I think so. Yeah. So, either way, the point is that maybe that those guys have all been together too long, and maybe we'll see a little shake up there before Thursday as well. Danny Ainge has not made in-season trades.
Yeah.
But I think there's a good chance that could change before Thursday.
Well, they've been sitting on like this excellent young core for like now it seems like years, and they've just not done anything with it.
No.
And so, there are a lot of colleges, Sam. There are only a few NBA teams. And
that's true. Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
the Indiana job is I mean, that should be, because they used to be such a power.
mhm.
Um, and I mean, people in that state are just so basketball crazy
Yeah,
and I mean, Brad
it's a different
Stevens
level.
was brilliant at Butler, just brilliant. So
Well, we will monitor that. Friday the 19th, they hosted the Spurs. They lost 110 to 116. Sunday hosted the Raptors. They defeated the Raptors 116 to 105. Monday they hosted the Kings. They lost 119 to 105. Sam, they're now 4 and 6 in the last 10.
yeah.
The past week, what have you noticed that you've liked to kind of see the team play? What have you liked in the development? Like what has stuck out to you over these last 4 games that you were like, hey, like that's something they can work. Like,
Well,
hey,
yeah,
that's good.
right. To me, first of all, these are the unevenness, the inconsistency of a young team. You beat Toronto at home and you look great, and then you're super flat the next night against the Kings. I will say this: the
Back to back.
Cavs, JB Bickerstaff rode like as he should have. He kind of rode the starters, played them a lot of minutes,
Sure.
as he should, against the Raptors to get a win. And the Kings didn't play the night before, and then the Cavs didn't play their starters as much the next night. It was a back-to-back. It was a difficult situation, and the Kings rode their starters. Where the Cavs they were tired and all that. So it was a bad loss, but you just came off a good loss 4 or 5 days, or a good win 4 or 5 days before that against Boston. So these are the kind of things that that are going to happen to a young team. But I would say, some of the things you like, obviously, is you do see those 4, and I'm really say 5, because Larry Nance Jr. Is going to be part of the future as well. He's not, 21, 22 like the other guys, but I think that those guys have the potential to, when they put it all together, really do some cool stuff. And I think that we saw that in the win over Boston. We saw that in the win over Toronto. We've seen that earlier this year.
Mm-hmm.
But what they need to do, obviously, is start doing that more consistently, and not winning, but being competitive and playing the right way more consistently as the season goes on, particularly after trade deadline. And I think that the Drummond situation is kind of a distraction, even though, because the players are probably like, I mean, we're all talking about it. What do you think they're doing? They're his teammate, and they're probably thinking, well, obviously he's not going to play and it doesn't really impact me, but it's still here, and it's hovering over us, this inability to come to a resolution. So it does weigh on you a little bit, but hopefully once that's all resolved, and not just that, but look, everybody, especially young guys, are wondering even if you're Colin Sexton, you're thinking, you would think you're pretty secure in Cleveland, but you never know. Anything can happen. I would say it's like a 99.9% chance they wouldn't trade Colin Sexton, but Colin Sexton knows there's that 0.01% chance that, so once the trade deadline's over, then you can focus on, okay, this is where we're going next year. Let's just go out and play every game to win, because now's the time to learn how to win. And you're not gonna most of the time, even if you try as hard as you can.
I would say there are 4 untouchable players in the Cavs.
And I know who they are.
Isaac Okoro.
I like how you started with Isaac Okoro, but go ahead.
Of course. What do you mean? I'm not going to cheat on my guy. Isaac Okoro. With our current roster, I think Larry Nance is untouchable. Like, if you're going forward with this core, you need. We saw when he was gone.
You need guys like Nance, without question.
Yes. Do not trade him. Darius Garland and Jared Allen.
So you would trade Sexton?
What I have found, I've been watching. What I've found is, I would rather have a player like a Garland than someone like a Sexton. I'm not putting down Sexton's skill. I love Colin Sexton, but I think I was wrong about Darius Garland's development, what he could do, what he could be. Sam, he's a delight. And
Well, sometimes I wonder if, and I don't say this like Sexton's trying
Mhm.
to do this, but sometimes I wonder, is he holding them back a little bit?
Mm.
Because he's so he's so ball dominant, and I love Sexton.
Yeah, I do
hate
too.
to see him go, but I do wonder if and maybe he's not, but I'm just saying in my own mind when I watch the game, sometimes I think, is Garland not becoming everything he could be because he's playing alongside a player who's his size, young, and
I'll say this: we've seen
very ball
Sexton's
dominant.
ceiling. I think we've seen what Sexton can be.
Right.
Can
I
be.
agree.
I
I
don't
agree.
know if we've seen Garland's. I mean, who would you compare
I agree.
Garland to currently in the league right now, Sam?
Boy, that's a hard. That's a hard.
Is it comp? What is like a Kemba maybe? Like a
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I can't gauge really what his ceiling is. And I don't know what. I mean, to me, I don't think that they're going to be able to keep that backcourt. I don't think that that's the backcourt of the future. I think one of those guys is going to go. And again, it's not because of any animosity or
yeah.
any of that. I just think
Yep.
maybe they're not a fit. Maybe it's just, and it's probably too soon to make that assumption. But at the same time, I
I mean,
just
maybe
think,
like a better offensively Ricky Rubio. I don't know.
I hope he's better than that. But
I'm just trying like ball movement distributor, his decision making is
yeah,
getting better.
he's definitely getting more comfortable
Yeah.
playing the point. And I mean, that's tough position to that's the toughest position to really kind of make that leap for as a freshman in college to, every once in a while you'll have an otherworldly type of guy who can do it like Kyrie, but most of rookie point guards that come right out of freshman year or right out of high school, when that was a thing, they're going to struggle those first couple of years. And I think he's made some nice strides. So yeah, it's hard to tell. It's hard to project because there's so much at play. And I the key is, does he fit with the other guy? And I don't know that the answer to that's yes. I don't know that it's no, but I don't know that it's yes either.
Right. So what I've found is just the importance of Darius Garland, like when he's out, especially with an injury, not playing at all, different team. When he's in, I feel comfortable and like, oh, okay, like we're gonna get into a set. It's gonna move. It's gonna work. The development of Isaac Okoro, like in my brain, he can do no wrong. I'm just like, oh, but it's okay. Like whenever there is an issue, like, oh, it's okay, buddy, you'll figure it out. I've seen like slowly, like his development that's slow, but there is development, and I'm just excited to see.
He's definitely better now
Mhm.
than he was at the beginning of the year.
Just you wait. Just you wait.
He'll
Just
be
you wait,
a
Sammy.
young Andre Iguodala in 2 weeks.
And then just how Nance is really the glue, and we've seen that. That's a popular phrase people use. It, guys, always a glue guy. Nance is a glue guy and more. And that's what I've noticed this week. Sam, you touched on Kyrie. I don't think I've asked you. Do you have like a Kyrie locker room story, like a Kyrie story that you'd be able to share?
What's funny is I always had a strong rapport with Kyrie. And
Kindred spirits. You're both flat earthers. That's it.
That's what it is. Yeah. Yeah. We're both free spirits. No, I think it's because I was here, when he got drafted.
Mm-hmm.
I was here, and I was working at Fox Sports Ohio, and I was doing some TV interviews for their Cavs preseason show, and I interviewed him.
It was right after LeBron left.
Yes. Yeah. It was like they played a season and then Kyrie came. So I interviewed him then one-on-one kind of, and just, I don't know what it was. I think maybe some of the players look at me as kind of like, the old guy who's safe and not going to be, I don't know. That's all I could come up with. 'Cause but the funny thing is, yes, I do have a Kyrie story, and I don't know why this happened, but somebody asked him a question. I don't know what the question was. I think it was, what happened there in the third quarter? And Kyrie looked at the guy, and this is kind of how Kyrie was. And he said, you were there. You saw the game. I wasn't aware of that. And then the reporter told me, and I showed up to the Kyrie media availability late after the game, like just 30 seconds late. I think I was talking to somebody, and I walked straight up to him. And I said, Kyrie, what happened there in the third quarter?
Oh, no, you didn't. Oh, no.
Yeah, I asked him the same question. And he smiled, and he talked and gave me a great answer exactly about what happened in the third quarter. And then we walked away from our little huddle there around Kyrie.
Yeah.
And the reporter was like, I had just asked him that same question. And he said, you were there. You were at the game.
Oh, my gosh.
And then he was all nice to you. So it's kind of funny. I laughed, but I always had a good rapport with Kyrie, and which is not very common, it seems, in the media.
Yeah.
And that's not to say he's just kind of standoffish to most of the media, and it's kind of funny, and his best friend from New Jersey moved here with Kyrie and ended up, unbeknownst to me, was coaching my oldest boy, like when Kyrie played for the Cavs in Brunswick.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, he ended up coaching, and then he lived with Kyrie here.
Yeah. Wow.
Which was funny, and he decided to be a volunteer coach at this thing, and he was a great guy. I can't remember his name, but so yeah,
Very
I
cool.
always had a good rapport with.
We'll start calling you Uncle Sam, Uncle Drew's friend, man.
That's right. That's right.
Hey, so the Cavs start another West Coast road trip, Sam, going into Slate 15 this Wednesday at the United Center. I love the United Center, Chicago. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, it's a great
numerous
building.
games.
Yeah.
I was at the D Rose playoff game winner.
Wow.
The one where LeBron hit one like the next game or something.
Yes.
That was super cool, but it's almost, I mean, growing up a Jordan fan, I had the at guard 6'6" from all that memorized. My first game United Center, it was like a religious experience, man. Like I was like tearing up when you hear that.
Yeah.
It's just like very much
isn't that sad? My wife never, she'll laugh at me, but I'm like, honey, you'll never know what it's like to tear up at a sporting event.
Oh my gosh.
She says, yeah, I'm kind of glad about that. And I'm like, no, you're not.
It was special. Yeah.
What a great building.
They're in the United Center against the Bulls at 8:00 Friday. Staples Center against the LeBron-less Lakers at 10:30. Then they travel to Sacramento to try to get that game against the Kings. 10 o'clock on Sunday, and then Monday the 29th they kick off Week 15 at Vivint Arena against the Salt Lake City, Utah Jazz. Sam, Cavs go 500 again this week?
No, they're not. I mean, they might. I don't know. The Lakers look really bad without LeBron.
But the Cavs are bad on the road. Like they have not played well. They're like 5-10, I think, on the road. They're not very good.
No, they're not good on the road. And those trips are brutal.
Yeah.
Well, you're certainly not going to beat Utah.
Yeah, that's an L. We'll give them an L for that one. Well, so Sam, they beat the 76ers.
Yeah, well,
they play these teams. They play these teams tough. They overlooked the Cavs.
They will. They'll play. Those last trips. They're those trips where you play the best team at the end.
Yeah,
those are always terrible.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm thinking, if they're going on this trip, and if they can get one, that's a victory.
Yeah, I'm going to say 500. I think they pull. I think they pulled out against the Lakers and the Kings, and I think they lose to the Jazz. And I think all
Bulls.
of them have a religious experience in the United Center. I think it's just.
I barely have seen the Bulls play this year, which is rare. I mean, normally when I'm flipping through, they're on, but I just have not. I haven't had a chance to see them very often this year. So it's hard for me to gauge where they will be.
Yep. Well, that does it for this episode of Cavs on the Break NBA podcast. Thank you all so much for downloading and listening. Shouts to our presenting sponsors, Aligned Health Center, for making this possible. Shouts to the Press Play Podcast Network for all that they do and all that they're promoting and all that they got pumping out. Good stuff at the P3. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Cavs on the Break. We always follow back. Follow Sam on Twitter at Amico Hoops. Catch all of his work and writings at 48minutes.com and outkick.com for all breaking news, insider info, and more. Don't miss out. Sam, any final thoughts?
No, I think, the Cavs aren't going to, I'd be surprised if they make anything that's like everybody's, wow, what a trade. Mm-hmm. But I do think that they will make a deal or two Thursday, and they'll have some new bench players, if nothing else.
Great. Hey, we'll let's do this sometime on Thursday evening so we get another episode out there of the deadline recap. And then if not, then we'll talk to you on next Tuesday, Sam.
Sounds great.
All right. Mike Breen, take us out.
Congratulations, Cleveland. Your decades-long wait is finally over. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.